ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pigskin Pick'em 2018 Week 6 Roundup. I think I've got all those words in the right order. You think I'd learn to write those down. Haven't yet, so it always makes it a fun post-edit. This week I have a special guest on here. A lot of you playing this year know him as NFL SuperPro. I know him as Evan Bevins. Evan Bevins, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good to be aboard.
I think it was probably like 3 or 4 weeks back. You said, man, you have an opportunity. I'd love to be on the show. So this was the soonest that we could work it out there. We've got a few things to talk about coming out of Week 6, I guess I should say, heading into Week 7 of the NFL. And I think what I'd first like to do is let our listeners know. Like I said, you go by NFL SuperPro on there. Now, I know what that's a reference to. Why don't you let our listeners know exactly who or where you got your nickname there from for the Pick'em?
Okay, well, it is, as anybody looking at the standings can see, it's not a reference to my ability to pick games. But it's actually from a short-lived early 90s Marvel comic that they, some sort of marketing deal they entered with the NFL with a superhero called NFL SuperPro, who was a retired NFL player who became a journalist and was doing a story on a guy who had invented a suit of armor to make someone the ultimate NFL player. When villains broke in, I think there was a fire and some chemicals. He put the suit on, and he was a superhero and living logo for the NFL.
That's right. I can remember those comics there. And this was the early 90s, right?
Yes. Started out with Fabian Nicieza writing it.
I remember that guy. Oh, man. Now, see, I want to start talking comics, and I realize, no, I'm on an NFL podcast.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a little more because he fought villains such as Quick Kick, Instant Replay, the Headhunters.
We still fight that villain Instant Replay every once in a while.
Yeah. And then he got a little environmental battling Ripsaw to save the rainforest.
Oh, that's great. That is great.
But yeah, we'll have to. There's probably another venue for that.
One I know very well, the Old Source Material podcast, right here on the Rattlich and Broadcasting Network. Go back in the archives, check it all out. Plug. We all have fandoms. You know I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I've said it many times here on the podcast. Sir, where do your allegiances lie?
Well, first I do have to note with the Browns that except for when they're playing my favorite team, I always root for the Browns because my great uncle was a diehard Browns fan, was actually in the stadium at the first Browns game ever.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm always rooting for the Browns unless they play the Washington Redskins.
Has it always been like that, or did you just...
As long as I can remember, and I don't really know why. Like I said, most of my family was either Browns or Steelers fans, although the Steelers fans weren't really into all the minutia of the division, so that there was not a lot of anger there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just have been a Redskins fan for as long as I could remember. First started watching football in the Joe Gibbs era, so I firmly believed that every couple of years your team just went and won the Super Bowl. And 25 years later, I've come to realize that's not the case.
Yeah, I can remember watching that Super Bowl team. Mark Rippon, wasn't he the?
Mark Rippon.
Yeah, he was the quarterback. I'm trying to think of some of the other teams or players. What's that?
Gibbs did it with 3 different quarterbacks: Joe Theismann, Doug Williams, and Mark Rippon, and the posse: Art Monk, Gary Clark, and Ricky Sanders.
My goodness. And what are they known as? Are these still known as the Hogs? Like, wasn't there like some kind of...
That was the offensive line, and if they ever do decide to move on from the nickname, I think the Hogs would be a perfect new mascot to honor the history of the team.
I like it.
But, yeah, that was the offensive line, and Trent Williams, the left tackle, has been trying to bring that back. And like with the Hogs 2.0, he's been trying to, him and Brandon Scherf, and they're getting there. It's not a sieve anymore.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what do you think of your team so far this year?
Well, they're doing a little better than I expected. I still can't explain the whole we don't want to give Kirk Cousins a long-term deal. My personal theory is that he's some sort of golem or homunculus, and the magic animating him is slowly draining away, and only the Redskins knew this.
Interesting. interesting theory.
That's the only thing that makes sense to me. But I mean, it's everybody's been raving about Alex Smith, and they're 3-2, and I know the Packers are not what they used to be, maybe, but beating the Packers handily is no small thing, and they played pretty well against the Panthers with half their receiving core and Chris Thompson out. So I hope things are going in the right direction, but just for the last, 2 decades, they've never been bad enough to go into full rebuild mode and rarely good enough to actually make the playoffs. So
yeah. Alex Smith, he's playing solid right now. I'm looking at, just like you said, they're 3-2. They're top of their division. Just looking at it, what he's got going on right now, he's got a completion percentage of 64.3, thrown for 1,205 yards. He's doing good, and I think he's played 5 of 5, right? He hasn't been knocked out, nothing like that.
No, he's still in there. I mean, I've never been one of these that thought Alex Smith was a bust or whatever. So I mean, he's not bad at all. It was hard for me to see how they were going to improve from Kirk Cousins with him, but hey, he's the quarterback now, and I'm rooting for him, and would love to be have my skepticism proven invalid.
Well, let's go ahead and we'll get into our topics of today. So we're coming out of Week 6. One of the things that I mentioned on our little Facebook group, I think most of the people that probably have the opportunity to listen to this are part of that Facebook group. If not, please let me know. Send me a message or something. I'll get you an invite. But one of the things that I said was that I just cannot figure out who is strong and who is a weak team in the NFL right now. I thought maybe what I would do is kind of jump off of that, throw out a little bit of data that I looked up here before the podcast, and see if I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but we'll see if my theory has got some validity to it. We'll just check and see. All right. So here's what I did. I looked at last year's playoffs. I didn't include any wild card wins, but I looked at everybody who won a game from the divisional forward. And I looked at their records now compared to, obviously they made the playoffs last year. They won one game. Here's the teams. We got the Philadelphia Eagles, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New England Patriots, and the Minnesota Vikings. So there's your 4 teams that were probably some of the strongest coming out of the NFL and had the opportunity to try and make it to the Super Bowl last year. The Philadelphia Eagles, you take a look at them right now. They are 3-3, and the losses that they had a loss to the Titans in overtime. So I don't know if you can really fault them for that. The second loss I have listed here is to Fitzmagic and the Buccaneers. That's right, the Buccaneers. And their third loss was to the Vikings, okay? What I'm looking for here is I'm looking for teams that have beat these strong contenders for the Super Bowl last year, and to see, are they outliers? Are they doing well at all? And I'd say out of those 3, the Buccaneers are probably the ones on the ropes right now in the NFL or one of the teams on the ropes. So I would say if there's an upset amongst those 3, the Buccaneers would definitely be it. Let's take a look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, also sitting at 3-3. So we have 2 teams that made the playoffs last year sitting at 50% so far. Now, they also have a loss to the Titans, a loss to the Chiefs. Chiefs doing really well this year. And of their back-to-back loss coming from their second loss here, coming from the Cowboys. The Cowboys put an absolute beat down on the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. So here we have a team that, they should have probably lost to the Chiefs as much on a roll as the Chiefs are right now. But the Titans, let me pull this up real quick. The Titans are sitting at, I think, tied for the top of their division right now.
But it is the AFC South.
Yep, AFC South, tied for the top of their division. There's a 3-way tie, by the way. Houston, Tennessee, and Jacksonville all sitting at 3-3, and Indianapolis sitting back there at 1-5. But there's this 3-way tie. So, but yes, the Cowboys, who also 3-3. Jacksonville at the beginning of the season, I thought, wow, they're going to be a contender. They gave Tom Brady and the New England Patriots a loss. So I was like, well, these guys are really strong. All of a sudden, things are starting to fall off. Again, a strong team that is not as strong as I originally perceived. Let's talking to Tom Brady here. Well, let's switch it over to New England. New England's sitting at 4-2, which is out of all 4 of these teams, they're the one with the best record. But again, they lost back-to-back to the Jags and Detroit. The Detroit Lions. That was probably one of the biggest upsets, I think, so far this year. You agree, Evan?
Yeah, I did not see that one coming at all. I am not an expert on some of the higher level analytics, but one thing I always remember is years ago when WVU was trying to get in the national championship picture, Don Nehlen saying, "Well, we beat the team that beat the team, so I think we ought to get in." And if you use that logic, you can't figure out who's best in the NFL.
You can't right now, because that's really what I base a lot of my picks on. Like, okay,
right.
Well, these guys have got this record, and who's beating them? The Detroit Lions beat New England? Well, okay, obviously I'm not going to put a heavy weight on them. That really does affect you, especially when you're dealing with points. When it just comes to, if you're picking straight up, okay, I'm going to probably put my money on the Patriots, 9 times out of 10 if we're just picking straight up. But when it comes to points, then you have to figure in, okay, how confident am I now? And when the Lions hand them a loss, you're like, well, okay, something's wrong here. Okay, moving on. Last team, Minnesota Vikings, 3-2-1. So they lost to the currently 2-4 Buffalo Bills, who I've always kind of looked down upon here, at least recently. I don't think they've been much of a team, but they're able to beat the Minnesota Vikings. They also lost to a very strong LA Rams. Mm-hmm. And, of course, their tie comes to their division rival, the Packers. So are they a strong team? I don't know. I mean, they can't seal the deal against the Packers. They lose to the Buffalo Bills. So right now, the only sure bets that I could probably say are definitely from each division, or I should say each conference. The Rams are definitely your best bet. They're sitting at 6-0 right now. You tell me. We'll just do this right off the cuff. The rest of the season, I'll go down through the games. You tell me win or loss for the Rams. Here we go.
Okay.
Rams at the San Francisco 49ers.
Win.
All right. Rams hosting the Green Bay Packers.
Probably a win.
Okay. Rams at the New Orleans Saints.
The way I'm feeling right now, I'd say win, but the Saints are getting better. They stumbled a lot, but I don't know. I'm going to go loss with that one.
Okay, all right. Now, see, I would almost kind of agree with you here. I mean, if you're just looking at Green Bay them up against Green Bay and them at New Orleans, I would say New Orleans is definitely the one that's going to give them the hardest time. All right, so they're then the LA Rams are hosting the Seattle Seahawks.
I figure that's a win.
Okay. Then we have, this will be a good game. Come November 19th, they're hosting the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wow.
Yeah,
that sounds like a Super Bowl preview right there.
Yeah, so they're at home.
It's the Dick Vermeil Alumni Bowl.
They're at home versus the Chiefs. What do you think?
I gotta go with the Rams right now because the Chiefs have done great, but they couldn't quite pull it off against the Patriots. So until they show that ability, I gotta go Rams.
All right, now as easy as this game you think would be, the Detroit Lions, the Rams at the Detroit Lions.
Well, let's say win, but I would not be nearly as shocked as I ought to be if the Lions somehow pulled it out.
Okay. All right. Rams at the Chicago Bears.
I feel like that's a win. Saw Chicago maybe isn't quite as high up as we thought they were.
Yep. All right. The Rams hosting the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's a tough one. I mean, the Rams don't have an easy schedule. Even if they win out, boy, they'll really have earned. We'll go with the home field advantage and say Rams.
Okay, all right, and then we have Rams at the Arizona Cardinals.
Rams.
All right, their last two games are probably pretty much gimmies, and then we have the Rams hosting the San Francisco 49ers.
By that point, I think we've only said, one possible loss.
Yeah.
They may be sitting everybody, so the 49ers might pull that out and they'll roll in at 14-2.
Yeah, 2. Let's see, is that in their division too?
It is in the division.
I mean, unless they get some upset losses in there, you're probably right. They're probably just going to sit some people and let the 49ers run wild. It'd be tough to do that since they're hosting the 49ers. It would suck to let it go out on a loss, let the season go out on a loss. But regardless, Yeah, you're probably right. So we'll just say, at the most, they're looking at possibly 2 losses. One, because it's going to be a garbage game, and the second one being on the road at the Saints. I guess back to my point, the Rams are a pretty sure bet, I think, this year to be probably one of the stronger teams in the NFL. And then on the other side of things, we have in the AFC, we got the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're rolling just as well right now. I think they're 5-1. I'm correct. Let me look here, make sure.
Yeah.
5-1. Only one loss, and that one loss was to the recent battle at New England. So if you're going to lose on the road, it's going to happen in New England against Tom Brady and the Patriots. That's.
And it's not like they got blown out or embarrassed.
No, it wasn't. It was a game, 40-43. Are you kidding me? So yeah. Now the teams that were sure bets last year, though, and this year, seem to be struggling. I mean, you look at New England, their loss to Detroit, last night's Green Bay, San Francisco game. You know, Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers, you were like, okay, these guys are making the playoffs. They have been such a strong team. Last night, Green Bay pulled it off, but that was just because San Francisco had a hard time stopping Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is the man. If you want to hand the ball to somebody at the end of the game to try and get you up a score to win it, Aaron Rodgers is your guy. Yeah, they were struggling, though. I mean, I remember seeing 2 notifications pop up. The pack was down. They had to come back from behind against the San Francisco 49ers. So not as strong as they once were. Then you have teams. They seem to be making solid picks topple. We already talked about Detroit and New England. Detroit beating New England. Let's look at the 2 teams at the bottom of the conferences. Okay, for the AFC, there's the Indianapolis Colts. They're 1-5. But that one win, it was against the Redskins.
That's right, because, the Redskins started off, I was all excited, and then it's like, oh, they just got smacked by the Colts.
Indianapolis Colts sitting 1-5. Their one win against the Redskins, who are right now at the top of their division. Then you look at the 1-5 Giants over in the NFC. But guess what? That one win was against another top team. That could be argued, considering they're tied 3 ways. But that was against the Texans. So, again, you're seeing these teams they look like they're struggling. They're doing horrible, but they're beating teams that seem to be completely capable of handling that game at the outset. So,
well, and you mentioned earlier the Bills beating the Vikings. I mean, I think everybody was in agreement going into that game. The Bills were pretty much the worst team in the NFL. Now, every time I pick against them, it still makes sense, but I'm like, but are they going to do it again?
Exactly. So, the point of it all, you cannot count on a sure win this year so far. It just seems like if you've got something, you look at our weeks. I wish I had the time to go back and take a look at it before I got on here. But I guarantee you, there was an average double-digit pick each week that ended up being upset in a loss.
The Bears.
Yes, exactly. The Rams are rolling right now with the best record in the NFL, but if the trends continue, an upset could very well happen against a very unlikely team. If there was an upset, and we look at that Rams schedule again, the biggest upset I would say that could probably happen may be the Lions again. And they have the Patriots card. I could see them having, the Rams card as well.
Maybe the Cardinals would be an even bigger shocker.
Evan Bevins, I turn it over to you, sir. I know you brought something to the table here.
Well, I remember as a kid always being kind of fascinated when you would have a tie in the NFL, just because it was so strange. And you look in the standings, and instead of 8-2, 9-3, whatever it was, a team had a final record of 8-7-1, and that was weird. And now this year, I'm honestly surprised we've only had 2 ties. You had the Steelers and the Browns, and all due respect to the Browns, breaking a 1-year-plus losing streak by not winning was like the most Browns thing they could do.
That's the truth.
Then you had Green Bay and Minnesota do it the next week, and I'm thinking, hey, I mean, how long has it been since you've had 2 ties in the same season? And then, what was it, a couple weeks later, the Browns darn near got their second one against the Raiders.
Yep.
And the Ravens came down to it too. I thought, wow, could they have more ties than wins?
Mm-hmm.
There's been so many of these games, and then Miami pulled pulled it off just barely, I think, as time expired against the Bears. And one game I was watching, I don't remember what it was, but it said something about, okay, and overtime is a 10-minute period. What? I felt like Donovan McNabb when he said, I didn't know games could end in ties. I mean, he gets paid to do that, and I don't. But still, I understand. They did the change a few years ago where they said each team gets the ball in overtime, which I've said for years. I'm sure that's where they got it. I probably posted it on Jeff Fisher's Facebook page or something. Except for the whole, but if you get a touchdown, I mean, I think it's fair for each team to get to touch the ball. If you fumble it on the kickoff in overtime and they run it back, that's the end. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so what you've done is maybe make overtime a little more fair, and then you take 5 minutes away from it. You're making it easy. You're making it so both teams have the possibility of scoring, and suddenly now they have less time in which to work. I'm not one of these people who thinks you should never have ties, but it just seems counterintuitive. And I mean, it's like every week I feel like the NFL's rooting for don't tie, don't tie, don't tie, and I don't have the numbers to back it up because that would take some serious time out of my searching for SuperPro back issues. But it just seems like, at first I was like, wow, it seems like there's a lot of overtime games and ties or near ties. Well, now it seems like it's easier than ever to tie. I don't want to complain too much because the last thing I want to do is for them to go the college overtime system, which is absurd. It's like, hey, let's go ahead and put the ball in scoring range, and you have to work really hard not to score. But then later we'll force you to go for two.
Yeah,
can't stand that. I mean, you've played the whole game of football, and now it's like, okay, we're going to go ahead and see if you can sink this 2-foot putt. It's a little harder. It doesn't make sense to me. I know, they're concerned about player safety and things like that, and certainly, I'm all for making it safer, but I'm not sure that shaving 5 minutes off of it is going to make a difference. And it just, I don't know. It's maybe it's not bad. Change isn't always bad, but it's just I don't know, kind of giving this season a real strange flavor to where you're kind of, even in games you don't care about, you're like, man, I hope it's not another tie.
Yeah.
You're rooting for somebody to score.
And really, okay, just to kind of tie it in with us here on the pick'em itself, when a tie occurs, nobody gets the points. So
right.
the people that suffer are the ones that have the higher numbers on whatever team. You could have a higher number on one team and a higher number on the other team. You're going to lose out those points for the week. That hurts. Not only that, but when
competition committee think about us?
No. I suggest you write a strongly worded letter and let them know.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I just had to get that indignation there.
But the other thing is, you're looking at these divisions that are facing. They face each other. They face their opponents twice throughout the season, and we have two divisions that have two ties in them because a team faced another team in that division. AFC North, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, they have a tie there. And then they have the NFC North with Green Bay and Minnesota. They have a tie there. That affects, if one of those teams would have won that game, they're going to be sitting at the top of their division. They're not right now. Like, looking at the NFC North, Chicago's sitting at 3-2. Green Bay and Minnesota each have 3-2, but one tie. And because of that, they are at .583, apparently, for the percentage here, and that is just enough to keep them below from being at the top. They're sitting at second and tied for second in that division. Now, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, things are different there. When you have Baltimore and Cincinnati sitting at 4-2, Pittsburgh could be right up there if they would have won against Cleveland. Or Cleveland could be doing a little bit better than their 2-3 record right now. Regardless, it's keeping those teams, those ties are keeping those teams out of what potentially should be a top spot in, or tied for the top spot in their division. An extra 5 minutes would be great so we could have a victor. Somebody either go home with a smile on their face or go home saddened because they lost. When you tie, both teams are not happy. Both teams are not happy, and they're not succeeding in the division because of that. Well, it would have been so strange to see two ties on Cleveland's record right now. So,
yeah.
Man.
I'm not sure. I don't know when the last time that happened.
For a team?
Yeah, I'm sure I emailed Elias about that.
Well, I can tell you that I know that the last time that two teams tied back-to-back. So, or we had two games that tied back-to-back in back-to-back weeks. That was like in 1970-something. So it's been over 40 years. I remember that stat popping up. But, yeah, as for a team tying twice in the season, have no idea. Okay, well, anything else there, Evan? Before we move on, I'm ready to run down some results of the weekly runnings here for week 6. You got anything else you'd like to talk about before we jump into that?
I'm good. I'm anxious to see exactly how much I have slid after that brief high at the start of the season.
If we could have had you on here earlier, when we were first talking about 3 weeks ago, boy, it would have been a different discussion, I imagine. But now where we're sitting at, well, let's go over the weekly. So for week 6, just taking a look at how things landed here. So SVP Ronnie. Now, Ronnie's missed 2 weeks worth of picks, so he was sitting in last. Now, Big Ben actually made picks again, which kudos to Big Ben. I don't know if he listens to this or not, and I mean Big Ben 07 in our Pigskin Pick'em, by the way. Not actually Big Ben for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Do we know that it's not Roethlisberger?
Good point, because I really don't know who this is. I know a few Steeler fans in here. You could tell by their monikers, but I really don't think I know who Big Ben 07 is. Either way, Big Ben's been consistent. He's picking games, but he's not putting points on things, which is fine. Once again, he's competing with percentage-wise, I'd assume. He's looking to see how well he's done. Well, this week, if you just look at his wins versus losses, he didn't do so great. I think he was on the higher end of things, missing 8 games, a little less than 50% this week. Now, let's get into the points here. Raider Nation. Now, Raider Nation's coming off of 2 weeks in a row where he's won, but man, did he fall hard this week, and he is in last place point-wise for the week. Freebird gets 13th for the week with 61 points and is likely cussing the Chiefs as he had 9 on them over New England. Tightening things, 5 positions from 12th to 8th sits Hobo Samurai, Sawin, Thug and Harmony, Stizzy, myself, and NFL SuperPro. This race was only separated by 3 points total. So 5 positions, 3 points total for the week. And within those 3 points are actually 2 speaking of ties, there are 2 ties. Sawin and Thug for 10th, and of course myself and you tied for 8th. Interesting standings there for the week.
Well, I just wanted to make sure I didn't outscore you, and we could tie, so it would make things less awkward for the podcast. If one of us had beaten the other and was loading, that would have been really, that would have been really awkward. So.
That was good play. Very good play. All right, then we got to look at the close competition for 7th through 5th. That ended up being a 1-point race between the 3, resulting in Steel Curtain in 7th, Dwayne Williams and Totally 80s Pat tied for 5th. Now, Dwayne may be wishing he could have that Denver pick back, as he was the only one that thought the Rams were going to get defeated by the Broncos on Sunday. It could have got
it's got to happen sometime.
That's right. And going into Mile High, I think they were playing at Denver, if I remember correctly. Let me look here. Going into Mile High has always been something that they will say, oh, man, you go up there, and it wasn't. It certainly wasn't a blowout. It was 23-20. I'm trying to see if it was at.
Yeah, it was at Denver.
It was? So,
yes.
I can't, Dwayne he put himself out there, and thinking that could have, and boy, I tell you what, things would have been different if Denver would have won and all those points were lost on the Rams. I'm telling you, he could have been sitting a little bit, if not very close to the top. So, all right, 4th place for the week goes to Go Luck Yourself, who came in only 2 points behind Mamaw Cat. And Mamaw Cat, which I think is Kathy, I don't know if you saw her talking on the Facebook page there. So it's the Bears against the Dolphins. And everybody's got huge points on the Bears here.
Sure.
That's the way it's supposed to go down. But 2 people, Raider Nation, the guy I was sitting beside in person watching football with, he takes the Dolphins, and Mamaw Cat takes the Dolphins. So I've seen her in the past. We played. I think she's been in this league pick 'em, whatever, for probably close to 5 years now. I've seen her pick the Dolphins, and I have griped about it every single time because she ends up winning or getting really close to the top for the week, all because of some improbable Miami Dolphins win. Here again is an exact example of what could occur. She takes the Dolphins, and an improbable overtime win over the Bears. She was, like I said, she was one of only two that saw that happening.
Oh, and maybe she knew about Brock Osweiler. I was listening to watching the end of that game, and they said Osweiler is 4-0 now against the Bears in his career. He's beaten the Bears on 3 different teams.
Wow. Yeah, because Tannehill goes out, and I think it was like really close to a last-minute decision where I think I got notification of it there Saturday that Tannehill was out and Osweiler was going to be picking up the duties from him. And I was like, okay, well, this solidifies my pick. You know, we got a backup quarterback coming in against the Bears. Khalil Mack's going to destroy this guy. Nope. He's able to. Did you watch any highlights for that game just by chance?
Yeah, I saw a few.
There was
that fumble at the goal line.
There was 2 of them in that game. There was two fumbles at the 1 yard line in that game, and I think one by each team. I could be wrong.
I think you're right. Yeah, because I had a very quiet day from Jordan Howard in one of my fantasy leagues.
So it was just a crazy game, and the Dolphins were able to come through, win over the Bears. Well, first place for the week, we have a tie. Both with 100 points sits Wilvis and the Burfict Storm. Wilvis suffered greatly with the whooping the Jags received from the Cowboys. He had a lot of points on them, but he was able to maintain, only losing 2 other games for the week, making him the player that missed. Yeah, he missed the least games for the week, total of 3, I believe. And then there's Burfict Storm, who only missed single digits on 4 games, securing a place at the top as well. So congrats to both of them. Yep, Wilvis and Burfict Storm tie for first place. So there you go. There's our weekly rundown. Now let's take a look at the overall. The overall, rounding up the bottom, again, SBP Ronnie, since he's missed 2 weeks so far, he didn't get any points for those weeks. He's clearly residing at the bottom in regards to points. Hobo Samurai and Freebird continue to play leapfrog, switching positions as Freebird now sits in 14th. Raider Nation 77 and Sawin stay steady in 12th and 11th respectively. The Burfict Storm, with his first place showing for the week, helps him advance a spot over Thug and Harmony, landing him in 9th and putting Thug back in 10th. Another switcheroo is the NFL SuperPro, falling a spot to 8th, relinquishing 7th to Mammal Cat.
Hey, remember that time I was in first place? That was great.
I do remember, sir. Dwayne Williams and Steel Curtain are unmoving in 5th and 6th, respectively. 4th place is our biggest drop of the week, going to me, Stizzy's Stompers, who dropped 2 spots from 2nd to 4th. Totally 80s Pat still kicking it at 3rd place. And we have a tie right now for first place, as our best improver, Wilvis, who jumped 3 spots from last week in the overall to tie for first place with Go Luck Yourself, each with 507 points. Now, to just kind of give you guys a heads up on the race, the overall races out there, there are some still tight races across the board. Here, aside from our tie in first, 3rd through 5th are only separated by 6 points total, okay? That's not even a full game. Then you look at 6th through 9th, separated by 9 points. The double-digit separations actually start in the next spot, and that's in 10th place, but that's only 12 points there. A lot of numbers, but yeah, you're looking at 10th place. They're only up behind 9th by 12 points. So overall, one good week for someone, I say this every time, one good week for someone versus someone else's bad week can result in a very big jump. Now next week, the buys are they're in swing, we'll just say. We only have 14 games to pick from, so it's very smart that you pick wisely, all right? Be ready, because you need to try and pick as best as you can, because you're not going to have as many points to try and make up some spots there. But the races between who's in front of you and who's behind you are so close. Again, it could come down to 1 or 2 games. So
there's a lot to look like pretty solid wins, but as we talked about earlier, that hasn't been the case this year.
So another just real quick bonus stat throw out there, and then we'll get to Evan's lock and his upset of the week. So I went in here and I looked at Week 6. I wanted to do a little something fun just to see where everybody kind of stacked up of the season to go. Okay?
Okay.
So we're looking at week 3 overall versus week 6 and the spots that they either gained or lost. Okay? Now, week 3, Wilvis sat in first place. Guess what? That's where he's at right now. No problem. Week 3 in the overall, second place belonged to NFL SuperPro. Now, in week 6,
now I'm in 8th.
Dropping 6 spots to 8. You are, sir, the largest dropper between the 3 weeks. So you gotta...
This reminds me of one of my favorite songs by the late Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Free Fallin'.
Go luck yourself sitting in third, has gone up 1 spot. Tied for second, actually probably 2 spots once they tied for first. Then 4th through 7th, if you look at the overall right now, it's the same as it was in week 3. Nobody moved. Now our best improver of the year so far between week 3 and week 6 is Totally 80s Pat. He went from 8th spot in week 3 all the way up to 3rd right now. So he's going very well for himself. I remember last year, Pat was on fire. I was really worried about him being a contender. And then I think we talked about it the first time he was on. He kind of dropped out. And he was like, I think he missed a week. They didn't save his picks, and he was pissed and never came back.
I just like to thank him for keeping the 8th place seat warm.
And then you look at the rest of these, from Thug all the way down to SVP Ronnie. There's like maybe 4 spot changes, but nobody, I should say 4 changes, but only 1 spot at the most between week 3 and week 6. So shout out to Totally 80s Pat and Evan. You got to get your stuff together, man. We're not even halfway through the season, so you've got plenty of time to become the best improver. Another 3 or 4 weeks on down the road. So
just letting everybody get lulled into a false sense of security.
I like it. All right, man. Well, let's get into your lock of week 7.
Well, I already said earlier in the game the Rams were going to win, but the more we talk about all these upsets, the less secure I feel. So I'm gonna go out on a little bit of a limb. I feel like the Chiefs are a lock. I know the Bengals have been doing well, and I hate to disrespect them, but until further notice, they are still the Bengals. Like we said, I don't think the Chiefs got blown out or embarrassed by the Patriots. Mahomes is going to probably put on another show. Hopefully for my fantasy teams, Tyreek Hill will go off again. So I think they're for real, and I think that they'll win in a shootout.
All right, Cincinnati at Kansas City. You're taking the Chiefs, locking it on down. All right, then, and I think that's a pretty safe pick as well. I mean, I haven't looked at all the games, but man, I can't remember which week it was. I think it was week 3 where I was like, man, I need 3 16s because it just seemed like every single one of them was a lock, and that was like the first week the Patriots fell. And I was like, shoot.
Don't tell my daughter, but the Chargers of the Titans, I'm pretty sure the Chargers will win, but she's a Titans fan, so
oh boy,
under wrap.
Definitely. Let's talk about the upset. This is usually a tough one, so you got to look through all these games and you got to pick an upset of the week.
After they eviscerated the Jaguars, that the Cowboys are going to be a pretty heavy favorite to a lot of people against my Redskins, but even if they were, I simply cannot pick the Cowboys to beat the Redskins. I might only put 1 point on the Redskins, but I'm gonna hope that Dallas overshot a little, and that the Redskins, despite that Colts loss that I literally blocked out, and the whooping from the Saints, gonna hope that they're on the plus side of mediocre this time. I'm gonna pick the Redskins as my upset. Now, I would feel even more confident about this if the game were in Dallas, because then I would be advocating that the Redskins bench Alex Smith for Colt McCoy, the most perfectly named Texas quarterback to ever walk the earth.
Oh, that's right. You had a theory. I forgot all about this.
Well, he was a star in Texas. I remember years ago, one year where the Cowboys really were doing a lot better than the Redskins, and whoever the Redskins starter was, I mean, I can't complain about a quarterback carousel because you're a Browns fan, but
true.
But Colt McCoy was in, and he delivered quite an upset against Dallas. So much like, if I can slip into comic book reference again, much like Captain Britain is super powered when he's in Great Britain and on British soil, I believe Colt McCoy is a superhuman quarterback, but only in the state of Texas.
I love it. That is tremendous. Tremendous. All right. Well, this brings our discussion to a close for the Pigskin Pick'em 2018 Week 6 Roundup. Evan, I want to know what you got. Some stuff to plug.
Well, you can go to webtoons.com and look up Support Group. It's a webcomic that I write and Nathan Arnold draws. It's about a support group for people with lame superpowers, in case your origin doesn't go the way they show it in the comic. Have not worked in any football references there yet.
Yes.
But working on that, and I apologize for not updating. I've had some technical difficulties on my end, but it's fun stuff. And then I also have mixed comics and football for Graffiti, which is a statewide entertainment news alternative publication in West Virginia. I've done a couple entries into the Comic Book Football Hall of Fame, suggested some comic-inspired fantasy team names, the All-Star Squadron or the All-Winners Squad, always a good choice.
Nice.
Or if you like Star Wars, you could go with the Atlantean Falcons, but I digress. So you can graffitiwv.com. You can look up some of those and some of my recent columns on comics. Newsandsentinel.com for the Parkersburg News and Sentinel. I write about the comic book origins of characters that are populating movie and TV screens so much these days.
Well, for Evan Bevins, the NFL Super Pro, I am Jesse Starcher. We're going to talk to you come Week 7. Everybody out there, good luck. We'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.